A black SUV had just pulled up outside the worn-down building on 47th Street. Out stepped a man in a tailored suit, surrounded by bodyguards, his shiny dress shoes clicking against the pavement. No one had ever seen someone like him around here, not in this neighborhood, not at Cuts & Styles. Inside, Mara Johnson was finishing a fade when the door swung open. She looked up and locked eyes with the billionaire everyone recognized from TV interviews and magazine covers. He walked straight toward her, and what he said next would change her life forever. But what shocked everyone even more wasn't what he offered, it was what she did with it. The city of Chicago was busy as usual. Tall buildings shone in the summer sun, and the streets were full of cars, people walking, and the soft sound of a saxophone from a street performer. On the corner of 47th Street, there was a small, old barbershop called Cuts & Styles. Inside, 28-year-old Mara Johnson was cutting a customer's hair. Her dark skin glowed under the bright lights, and her short braids were tucked under a baseball cap. She wore jeans, a t-shirt, and a black apron. Her hands were steady as she used the clippers carefully. Mara's life wasn't fancy. She grew up in a tough neighborhood on the South Side. Her mother raised her alone but passed away 2 years ago. The barbershop, which had been in the family, was all she had left. It wasn't perfect. The paint on the walls was peeling, the mirror was cracked, and the neon sign outside flickered, but it belonged to her. She worked hard, 6 days a week, to keep it running and pay off the debts her mother left behind. Mara didn't complain. She loved cutting hair, talking to her customers, and being part of the community. But at night, when the shop was quiet, she often looked at the growing pile of bills and wondered if life would ever get easier. Across town, in a glass penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, 35-year-old Ethan Caldwell sat at a sleek mahogany desk, scrolling through emails on his laptop. Ethan was the CEO of Caldwell Enterprises, a tech company worth billions. His sharp jawline, tailored navy suit, and piercing blue eyes made him look like he stepped out of a magazine. He had everything: money, power, a private jet, and a mansion in the suburbs. But Ethan wasn't happy. His days were filled with board meetings, contracts, and people who wanted something from him. His nights were lonely, spent in a penthouse that felt too big, too empty. He hadn't always been this way. Growing up in a small town in Ohio, he'd known struggle, but success had changed him, or so he thought. Today was different, though. Ethan had a meeting on the South Side, a rare trip outside his polished world. His driver, Marcus, pulled up to a community center where Ethan was supposed to announce a new charity fund. But his usual barber, who traveled with him, had called in sick. Ethan needed a quick haircut to look sharp for the cameras. Marcus, a Chicago native, suggested a local spot. "There's a good barbershop nearby, boss," he said. "Cuts & Styles. They'll hook you up." Ethan frowned, glancing at his watch. "A random barbershop? You sure it's decent?" Marcus chuckled. "Trust me, Mr. Caldwell, Mara's the best." Reluctantly, Ethan agreed. The black SUV rolled through the busy streets, passing corner stores, kids playing basketball, and old men chatting outside a diner. When they pulled up to Cuts & Styles, Ethan raised an eyebrow. The shop looked rundown, nothing like the upscale salons he was used to. But he didn't have time to argue. He stepped out, adjusted his tie, and walked inside. The bell above the door jingled. Mara looked up from her client, a middle-aged man named Mr. Jenkins, who was mid-story about his grandson's basketball game. The shop was small, with 3 barber chairs, a waiting area with mismatched couches, and a radio playing R&B. 2 other barbers, Jamal and Tasha, were working on their clients, laughing and joking. The air smelled of aftershave and hair oil. Mara's eyes landed on Ethan. He stood out like a sore thumb in his expensive suit, his polished shoes clicking on the linoleum floor, She raised an eyebrow but kept her tone polite. "Hey, welcome to Cuts and Styles. You got an appointment?" Ethan shook his head, offering a small smile. "No, I just need a quick trim. My driver said you're good." Mara nodded, finishing Mr. Jenkins' fade. "All right, give me 10 minutes. Take a seat." Ethan sat on one of the couches, feeling out of place. The other customers glanced at him curiously, but no one made a big deal. He watched Mara work, noticing her confidence, the way she laughed with her client, her hands moving like they knew the Clippers by heart. There was something about her, something real, grounded that he wasn't used to. Most people he met either fawned over him or wanted something. Mara didn't even seem to care who he was. When it was his turn, Ethan sat in her chair. Mara draped a cape over him, her fingers brushing his shoulders as she adjusted it. "So, what do you want?" she asked, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "Just a cleanup. Low taper, keep it sharp," Ethan said, his voice calm but authoritative. Mara smirked. "Got it, boss man." She started clipping, her movements quick and precise. The shop's chatter faded into the background as they talked. Ethan asked about the shop, and Mara shared a little about her life, how she'd been cutting hair since she was a teenager, how the shop was her mum's dream. She didn't mention the debts or the late nights worrying about bills, but her voice carried a quiet strength. "You've got a good setup here," Ethan said, glancing around. Mara chuckled, brushing hair off his neck. "Real, huh? That's one way to say old and falling apart." Ethan smiled, something he didn't do often. "No, I mean it. It's got character, not like the sterile places I usually go." Mara paused, studying him in the mirror. "You don't strike me as the barbershop type. What's your deal? Some big-shot businessman?" He laughed softly, "Something like that." She didn't press, and he liked that. For the first time in a while, Ethan felt like he could just be Ethan, not the billionaire, not the CEO, just a guy getting a haircut. When she finished, Mara spun the chair around and handed him a mirror. "How's that?" Ethan checked his reflection. The cut was perfect, sharp and clean. "Damn, you're good," he said, genuinely impressed. "Told you," Mara said with a grin. "That'll be $20. Ethan pulled out his wallet, slipping out a $100 bill. "Keep the change." Mara's smile faded. She took the bill, counted out $80 in change, and handed it back. "I don't take handouts. 20's the price." Ethan blinked, surprised. Most people would have pocketed the tip without a second thought. "It's just a tip," he said. "And I said 20's the price," Mara repeated, her tone firm but not unkind. "You want a tip? $5 is plenty." Ethan stared at her, a mix of respect and curiosity stirring in him. He took the change, pocketing it. "Fair enough." As he left, the bell jingled again. Mara watched him go, her arms crossed. Tasha, the other barber, leaned over. "Girl, you know who that was? Ethan Caldwell, the billionaire tech guy. You just turned down his money." Mara shrugged, cleaning her clippers. "Don't care who he is, I earn my keep." But as she swept the floor, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd see him again. There was something in his eyes, something lonely, something searching, that stuck with her. That night, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about Mara. He sat in his penthouse, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring at the city lights. Her confidence, her pride, the way she didn't care about his money, it was new to him. He'd met models, actresses, and CEOs, but none of them had her spark. He pulled out his phone and searched for Cuts and Styles. The shop's website was basic, with a few photos of Mara cutting hair, smiling with customers. There was a donation link for Save the Shop, but it didn't say much. Ethan's curiosity grew. Why was she so stubborn about the tip? What was her story? The next day, Mara arrived at the shop early to open up. She unlocked the door, flipped on the lights, and froze. A letter sat on the counter, sealed with wax. Her name was written in neat handwriting. She frowned, looking around. The shop was empty, the door locked. How did it get here? She tore it open. Inside was a check for $1 million, made out to Cuts and Stylers. A note was attached. Mara, your shop deserves to thrive. Use this to keep your mother's dream alive. No strings attached. Ethan, her hands trembled. $1 million? It could pay off the debts, fix the shop, maybe even let her breathe for the first time in years. But something felt wrong. Why would a stranger, a billionaire, do this? What did he want? Her pride flared. She wasn't a charity case. Mara grabbed her phone and searched for Ethan Caldwell. Articles popped up. Tech mogul donates millions to charity. Caldwell Enterprises hits record profits. She found his company's contact page and dialed the number, her heart pounding. Mr. Caldwell's office, a woman answered. This is Mara Johnson. I need to speak to Ethan. Now. The assistant hesitated. Mr. Caldwell is in a meeting. Tell him it's about the $1 million he left in my shop, Mara said, her voice sharp. There was a pause, then a click. Ethan's voice came through, calm but curious. Mara, you got my note? Yeah, I got it, she said, gripping the check. And I'm not taking. I don't know what game you're playing, but I don't need your pity. It's not pity, Ethan said quickly. It's respect. I saw how much that shop means to you. I wanted to help. Help? Mara laughed, but it was bitter. You don't even know me. Why would you give me $1 million? Ethan was quiet for a moment. Because I see you, Mara. You're real. You're not like anyone I've met. Her breath caught. His words sounded sincere, but she didn't trust them. Rich people always had an angle. I'm coming to your office, she said. We're settling this today. She hung up before he could respond, her heart racing. She stuffed the check in her pocket, locked the shop, and headed downtown. This wasn't over. Mara's heart pounded as she stepped off the bus in downtown Chicago. The skyscrapers loomed above her, their glass facades reflecting the bright summer sun. She adjusted her baseball cap and tightened her grip on the check in her pocket. The city felt like a different world from her South Side neighborhood, sleek, polished, and intimidating. But Mara wasn't scared. She was angry. Who did Ethan Caldwell think he was, dropping $1 million in her shop like it was pocket change? She wasn't some charity case, and she wasn't about to let him think he could buy her respect. Caldwell Enterprises was housed in a towering building with a marble lobby that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. Mara pushed through the revolving doors, her sneakers squeaking on the shiny floor. The receptionist, a young woman in a crisp blazer, looked up with a practiced smile. Can I help you? I'm here to see Ethan Caldwell, Mara said, her voice firm. The receptionist glanced at Mara's casual clothes, jeans, t-shirt, and apron still tied around her waist from rushing out of the shop. Do you have an appointment? No, but he'll want to see me, Mara said, pulling the check from her pocket and holding it up. Tell him Mara Johnson's here about this. The receptionist's eyes widened at the check, but she quickly recovered, picking up the phone. After a brief conversation, she nodded. Take the elevator to the 45th floor. Someone will meet you there. Mara rode the elevator alone, her reflection staring back at her in the mirrored walls. She straightened her cap, trying to calm the nerves creeping in. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about pride, about proving she didn't need anyone's handouts, especially not from some rich guy who thought he could swoop in and fix her life. On the 45th floor, a man in a suit greeted her. Miss Johnson, I'm David, Mr. Caldwell's assistant. This way, please. He led her down a hallway lined with glass offices, where people in suits typed furiously or talked on headsets. At the end was a large corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. Ethan stood behind a sleek desk, looking out at the city skyline. He turned when Mara entered, his blue eyes meeting hers. He wore another tailored suit, this one gray, and his hair was still perfectly trimmed from her cut yesterday. "Mara," he said, his voice warm but cautious, "I didn't expect you to come all the way here." She didn't sit when he gestured to a chair. Instead, she pulled the check from her pocket and slapped it on his desk. "What's this about, Ethan? You think you can just throw money at me, and what? I'll owe you? I'm not for sale." Ethan's face softened, but there was a flicker of hurt in his eyes. "That's not what this is," he said. "I wasn't trying to buy you. I saw how hard you work, how much that shop means to you. I thought the money could help." "Help?" Mara crossed her arms. "You don't know me. You don't know what I need. You walked into my shop one time, and now you're writing million-dollar checks. That's not normal." Ethan leaned against his desk, his hands in his pockets. "Maybe it's not normal, but I meant what I said in the note. Your shop, your mum's dream. It's worth saving. I've got the means to help, so why not?" Mara laughed, but it was sharp, almost bitter. "Because I don't take handouts. I've been taking care of myself since I was a kid. My mom taught me to work for what I have, not to wait for some rich guy to save me." "I'm not trying to save you," Ethan said, his voice rising slightly. "I'm trying to invest in something real. Your shop, your community. It's the kind of thing I wish I could be part of." Mara frowned, studying him. His words sounded sincere, but she didn't trust them. Rich people always had an angle. "Why do you care so much? What's in it for you?" Ethan hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know how to explain it. When I was in your shop, I felt normal. Like I wasn't just a name on a building or a bank account. You treated me like a regular person. That's rare for me." Mara's anger faltered for a moment. She saw something in his eyes, loneliness, maybe, or a longing for something he couldn't buy. But she pushed the feeling aside. "That's not my problem," she said. "You can't just drop $1 million and expect me to be grateful. I don't trust it, and I don't trust you." She turned to leave, but Ethan stepped forward. "Wait, please. Let's talk about this. If you don't want the money, fine. But at least tell me why it bothers you so much." Mara stopped, her hand on the door. She turned back, her eyes narrowing. "Because I've seen people like you before. You come into places like my neighborhood, throw money around, and then what? You leave. Or you want something in return. I'm not your project, Ethan." He flinched, like her words had hit a nerve. "I'm not like that," he said quietly. "But I get why you'd think that. Let me prove I'm not." "How?" she asked, skeptical. "Let me spend time at the shop," he said. "No money, no checks. Just me, helping out. I want to understand your world." Mara stared at him, caught off guard. A billionaire volunteering to hang out in her rundown barbershop. It sounded ridiculous. "You're serious?" she asked. "Dead serious," Ethan said, his eyes steady. "Give me a week. If you still think I'm full of it, I'll walk away, and you'll never hear from me again." She hesitated. Part of her wanted to tear up the check and storm out, but another part, the part that saw that flicker of loneliness in his eyes, wondered if he meant it. "1 week," she said finally. "But you're not running things. You do what I say, and you don't get special treat." Ethan smiled, a small, genuine smile that made her stomach twist. "Deal." The next morning, Mara arrived at Cuts and Styles to find Ethan already there, leaning against the wall outside. He was dressed down. For him, khakis and a white button-up shirt. No tie, sleeves rolled up. He looked out of place but determined. "You're early," Mara said, unlocking the door. "Wanted to make a good impression," Ethan replied, following her inside. She handed him a broom. "Start sweeping. Floor's a mess." Ethan raised an eyebrow but took the broom without complaint. As Mara set up her station, she watched him out of the corner of her eye. He swept awkwardly, like he'd never held a broom before, but he didn't complain. Customers started trickling in, and the shop filled with its usual chatter and laughter. Jamal and Tasha, the other barbers, gave Ethan curious looks but didn't say much. Mr. Jenkins, the regular from yesterday, sat in Mara's chair. "Who's the new guy?" he asked, nodding toward Ethan, who was now wiping down mirrors. "Some rich guy who thinks he can hang," Mara said, loud enough for Ethan to hear. Ethan chuckled, but kept working. Mr. Jenkins grinned. "He don't look like he belongs here." "He doesn't," Mara said, clipping Mr. Jenkins' hair. "But he's trying." By midday, the shop was packed. Ethan handed out towels, took payments, and even answered the phone, though he fumbled the booking system. Mara had to admit he was trying, but she still didn't trust him. Why was he here? What did he really want? At lunch, they sat in the back room, a cramped space with a folding table and a microwave. Mara unwrapped a sandwich from the corner deli, and Ethan pulled out a salad from some fancy downtown place. They ate in silence for a moment before Ethan spoke. "So how'd you learn to cut hair like that?" he asked. Mara chewed slowly, debating whether to answer. "My mum," she said finally. "She taught me when I was 12. Said it was a skill I could always fall back on." "She sounds like she was special," Ethan said. "She was," Mara said, her voice softening. "She passed 2 years ago, cancer. This shop was her dream, so I kept it going." Ethan nodded, his eyes gentle. "That's why I left the check. I figured it could help keep her dream alive." Mara's jaw tightened. "I told you, I don't need your money." "I know," Ethan said quickly. "I'm just saying, I get it. Losing someone you love, it changes you." She looked at him, surprised. "You lost someone?" He hesitated, then nodded. "My dad. When I was a kid, he was a mechanic. Worked hard his whole life, never had much. But he was proud, like you." Mara didn't know what to say. For the first time, she saw a crack in Ethan's polished exterior. Maybe he wasn't just a rich guy playing a game. But she wasn't ready to let her guard down. That evening, as they closed the shop, Ethan lingered by the door. "So, how'd I do?" he asked, a playful grin on his face. "You didn't break anything," Mara said, locking up. "That's a start," he laughed. "I'll take it. See you tomorrow." She nodded, but as she walked home, her mind raced. Ethan was getting under her skin, and she didn't like it. He was too charming, too earnest. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was all leading somewhere dangerous. The next few days, Ethan showed up every morning. He swept floors, ran errands, and even started joking with customers. The regulars warmed to him, especially Miss Jenkins, who teased him about his fancy pants clothes. Mara watched it all, torn between annoyance and something she couldn't name. Ethan was different from what she'd expected, but she still didn't trust his motives. On the 4th day, a man in a suit showed up at the shop. He was tall, with slicked back hair and a briefcase. "Miss Johnson?" he said, his tone formal. "I'm with Horizon Realty. We're interested in buying this property." Mara froze. The shop was in her name, but the landlord had been pressuring her to sell for months. "I'm not selling," she said flatly. The man smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "You might want to reconsider. This neighborhood's changing. You don't want to be left behind." Ethan, who'd been wiping down a chair, stepped forward. "She said she's not selling. You got a problem with that?" The man glanced at Ethan, sizing him up. And you are? Someone who cares about this shop, Ethan said, his voice hard. The man smirked and left, but Mara's stomach churned. She turned to Ethan. You don't get to fight my battles. I wasn't, Ethan said. I just didn't like his attitude. Mara shook her head, her frustration boiling over. You don't belong here, Ethan. You're playing at this, but this is my life, my fight. You can't just walk in and act like you're part of it. Ethan's face fell. I'm not playing, Mara. I'm here because I want to be. She didn't respond. She couldn't. Her heart was racing, and not just from anger. There was something between them, something she wasn't ready to face. As she locked up that night, she wondered if letting him stay was a mistake. The morning sun filtered through the cracked windows of Cuts and Stiers, casting long shadows across the linoleum floor. Mara stood behind her chair, clipping the hair of a teenage boy named Malik, who was telling her about his latest basketball game. She nodded and smiled, but her mind was elsewhere. Ethan Caldwell had been coming to the shop for 5 days now, and every day, her feelings grew more tangled. He was polite, hard-working, and surprisingly good with the customers, but his presence stirred something in her she didn't trust. A mix of curiosity, attraction, and fear. Fear that letting him in would mean losing control of the one thing she had left her: independence. Ethan was at the front of the shop, organizing the appointment book. He'd gotten better at it, though he still mixed up names sometimes. Today, he wore a simple black polo and jeans, blending in a little more than usual. The regulars, like Mr. Jenkins and Mrs. Carter, had started treating him like part of the crew, teasing him about his city boy ways. Mara watched him laugh with Mrs. Carter, who was waiting for her grandson's haircut, and felt a pang in her chest. He was fitting in too well, and it made her uneasy. The bell above the door jingled, snapping Mara out of her thoughts. A woman walked in, tall and polished, with sleek blonde hair and a designer dress that screamed money. She carried a tablet and a purse that probably cost more than Mara's rent. The shop went quiet for a moment. All eyes on the stranger. Mara Johnson? The woman asked, her voice crisp. That's me, Mara said, pausing her clippers. Who are you? Claire Bennett, Caldwell Enterprises, the woman said, offering a tight smile. I'm Ethan's business manager. Can we speak privately? Mara's stomach tightened. She glanced at Ethan, who looked as surprised as she felt. He set down the appointment book and stepped closer. Claire, what are you doing here? He asked, his tone sharp. Claire ignored him, focusing on Mara. It's about your property. Can we talk? Mara wiped her hands on her apron and nodded toward the back room. 5 minutes. I've got clients. In the cramped back room, with its folding table and flickering light, Claire didn't sit. She stood, tapping her tablet. Mara leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Ethan followed them, closing the door behind him. What's this about? Mara asked, her voice steady but guarded. Claire didn't waste time. Caldwell Enterprises is part of a development project in your neighborhood. We're acquiring properties to build a mixed-use complex, retail, housing, the works. Your shop is on one of the lots we need. Mara's jaw clenched. I already told your realty guy I'm not selling. Claire's smile didn't waver. I understand, but this is a big opportunity. We're prepared to offer you $1.5 million for the property. That's enough to relocate your business, pay off any debts, and start fresh. Mara laughed, but it was cold. You people don't listen. This shop was my mom's. It's not just a building, it's her legacy. No amount of money's changing that. Claire's eyes flicked to Ethan, who'd been silent. Ethan, you know how important this project is. Maybe you can explain the benefits. Ethan's face hardened. I didn't know about this, Claire. You went behind my back. Claire raised an eyebrow. It's business, Ethan. The board approved the plan weeks ago. You've been distracted. Her gaze shifted to Mara, her meaning clear. Mara's heart sank. She looked at Ethan, searching his face. You knew about this? No, Ethan said quickly, stepping toward her. I swear, Mara, I had no idea. The board handles real estate deals. I don't micromanage every project. But it's your company, Mara shot back. You expect me to believe you didn't know they were coming for my shop? I didn't, Ethan said, his voice low but firm. And I'll fix this. Claire sighed, tapping her tablet. Ethan, be reasonable. This project will bring jobs, infrastructure, things this community needs. Miss Johnson, you'd be helping your neighborhood. Don't talk to me like I'm stupid. Mara snapped. You don't care about my neighborhood. You want to bulldoze it and build fancy condos for rich people. I'm not helping you do that. Claire's smile faded. You're making a mistake. This offer won't last forever. Then take it and leave, Mara said, opening the door. Claire glanced at Ethan, then walked out, her heels clicking. Mara turned to Ethan, her eyes blazing. You need to go too. Mara, please, Ethan said, his voice almost pleading. I didn't know. Let me make this right. How? She asked. Your company's trying to take my shop, Ethan. You think sweeping floors makes up for that? I'll talk to the board, he said. I'll stop the deal. Mara shook her head. You don't get it. This isn't just about the shop. It's about trust. I let you in here, and now I find out your people are coming for my home. Get out. Ethan opened his mouth to argue but stopped. He saw the hurt in her eyes, the betrayal. Without another word, he left. The rest of the day, Mara worked on autopilot. She cut hair, laughed with customers, and kept the shop running, but her mind was a storm. Jamal and Tasha noticed her mood but didn't push. When the shop closed, Mara sat at the counter, staring at the check Ethan had left days ago. She hadn't torn it up, but she hadn't cashed it either. Now, with Claire's visit, she wondered if the check was part of some bigger plan. Was Ethan playing her from the start? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mara, it's Ethan. I'm sorry about today. She stared at the message, torn. Part of her wanted to delete it, to cut him out completely. But another part, the part that remembered his kindness, his stories about his dad, wanted to believe him. She didn't reply, but she didn't delete the message either. The next evening, Mara walked to the community center, a brick building a few blocks from her shop. The air was warm, and kids rode bikes on the sidewalk, their laughter mixing with the hum of the city. She wasn't sure why she was going. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was hope. Either way, she needed answers. Inside, the community center was busy. A youth basketball game was wrapping up, and parents chatted in the lobby. Ethan stood near the entrance, dressed in a simple jacket and jeans. He looked nervous, his hands in his pockets. Thanks for coming, he said when he saw her. I'm not here for you, Mara said, her tone sharp. I'm here to hear what you have to say. Ethan nodded, leading her to a quiet corner. I talked to the board today, he said. I told them the deal for your block is off. They're not happy, but I'm the CEO. They'll listen. Mara crossed her arms. Just like that, you expect me to believe you shut down a multi-million-dollar project for my little shop? It's not just your shop, Ethan said. It's your home, your mum's dream. I meant what I said, Mara. I respect you. I don't want to be the guy who takes that away. She studied him, searching for a lie. His eyes were steady, his voice sincere, but she'd been burned before. Why should I trust you? She asked. You don't have to, Ethan said. But I'm trying to show you I'm different. Come with me. He led her to a room down the hall, where a group of community leaders sat around a table. Mara recognized a few faces: Ms. Thompson, who ran the after-school program, and Mr. Davis, a local pastor. They smiled when they saw her. "Mara, good to see you," Ms. Thompson said. "Ethan was just telling us about his new plan." "What plan?" Mara asked. Looking at Ethan, he took a deep breath. "I'm redirecting funds from the development project to the community center. Renovations, new programs, scholarships for kids. No bulldozers, no condos, just support for what's already here." Mara blinked, caught off guard. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Ethan said, echoing his words from their first deal. "And I want you to help decide how the money's used." "You know this neighborhood better than I ever will," Thompson nodded. "We could use someone like you, Mara. You've got a good head on your shoulders." Mara didn't know what to say. This wasn't what she'd expected. She'd come ready for a fight, not a partnership. "I'll think about it," she said finally. Ethan smiled, but it was cautious. "That's all I ask." That night, Mara lay in bed, staring at the ceiling of her small apartment. The check still sat on her dresser, untouched. Ethan's words played in her head. His promise to stop the deal, his plan for the community center. It sounded good, too good, but the betrayal from Claire's visit still stung. Was Ethan really on her side? Or was this another rich man's game? Thanks for watching.